This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
Hello, this is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio. We're not live, so do not text the show. But you can still follow us at Frank on the Radio on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us via the Absolute Radio website. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Good day to you, gentlemen.
You could both be naked for all I know in your respective homes, but who cares? Who cares anymore about that?
I'm wearing some of the Lecoq Sportif branded tracksuit bottoms, since you ask.
Very apt.
You're wearing branded items. Lovely.
Yeah. and a tracksuit top. That's my get-up for
Thanks, Skinner.
broadcasting.
Not that different from non-lockdown Britain.
I think when lockdown is fully released, I might end up starting just wearing tracksuits all the time, like a personal trainer or something. I don't know if I'll ever go back to denim or a collared shirt.
I mean, I always think that if I went through the publicity shots of Ocean Colour Scene and inserted you with Photoshop, no one would notice.
Yeah.
For years.
Not anymore.
Do you know what, Frank? There's definitely a Kangol hat in that cockerel cupboard.
Oh, for sure.
Are you with me?
Those Kangol. I've got one of those somewhere. It's in why I've got one. I've got one because I saw Elvis wearing one on a beach. So I bought one.
You saw Elvis shooting a light bulb. You haven't done that.
Well, I didn't actually see that. I only heard about it. We keep getting requests if I've got more Elvis anecdotes. As if I was one of the Memphis Mafia and I knew him well. But I might throw one in later. You know what? Just for the hell of it. So stick
Frank,
around if you...
Had you been in the Memphis Mafia, what would you have seen your role as? Do you know what I mean?
I'd like to have been the one who wasn't on Class A drugs. Would
was
be
there
one?
one?
No, there wasn't one. But I've met several of the Memphis Mafia, and they're all slightly broken men in that respect. But also, what I do like about them, they very, very upfrontedly say, oh, well, since Elvis died, life's been rubbish, really. It used to be just mega exciting. Now it's,
right.
We've never got over it. And I kind of like that. I like, when you get people who were big in a soap opera 30 years ago, and then they haven't worked for ages, and they say, no, I've still got loads of stuff going on. We've all done it. What I like about the Memphis Mafia, they say, no, it's been absolutely rubbish since he died. And I think there's some, I respect that.
It's the Paul Burrell honesty.
Yeah, was he famous for his...
Paul Burrell, well, I suppose with Diana...
I don't think he was famous for his honesty in some
ways.
No,
but it's the Paul Burrell, he talks about the princess quite a lot, I'd say.
Yeah, he does. He does bring her up now and again. But, it must have been quite a big energy to be around, I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
Can I first of all say, do you remember last week I had to sort of stop the comedy for, I think it was almost 2 hours, because I had to bemoan the death of Florian Schneider of Kraftwerk. And then, so we do the show, it goes out on the Saturday. That afternoon, little Richard dies.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I still think the creator of one of the great rock and roll lyrics of all time, a what bop-a-loo bop, a what bam boom, which sounds like me being ironic, but I do think it sort of sums up that. Do you remember youth? Do you remember when you were like young, really young?
How dare you?
Teenage. And, that burgeoning sexuality, which could only be expressed by words like a what bop-a-loo bop, a what bam boom. It's like by religious people sometimes speak in tongues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I saw him at Wembley Stadium in 1972 and was very excited to see him. And he played 2 or 3 hits, was brilliant. And then he just got the band to play a 12-bar blues and he took all his clothes off. So it was less good than I hoped for.
You see, the song that sums up youth for me, I would say, is probably Jump Around by House of Pain.
Yeah.
Just because, well, it's just what children do, essentially, or the young. There's so much energy in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By the way, that same Wembley gig, a bunch of teddy boys, I remember, canned off Gary Glitter.
Did they?
In the same gig. Yeah, they knew.
They knew.
Teddy Boys. It's 72. They just instinctively knew.
Frank Skinner on
Absolute Radio.
It was my sister-in-law's birthday this week, so we decided to go over to her house to drive. I think this is allowed under the current semi-lockdown rules. Who knows? We decided to drive over there and then stand outside her window. And this is me and Kath, my partner, and Bars, our child, each holding a sign. Happy one would hold, then birthday the second one, and then Buzz to be holding Auntie Rachel. So we got all set, and Kat said, "I've told Rachel we're coming," and I said, "Hey, why did you do that?" And she said, "Well, I just we don't just sort of turn up. They might have been out or something." And I said, "This is probably the last week in the history of Great Britain when you can be 99.9% certain that someone won't be out if you turn up impromptu." So anyway, I'll be honest with you, I was a bit miffed. So we got over there, and
I bet you contained it, though. Bet she had no idea.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You know me, suffer in silence. So she was sitting on the step. Her whole family were sitting on the step. The family that lived there, she hadn't broken any rules. And we got there, and we had the signs under our arms, and then we just had to get them out in front of her and hold them. And she says, "Oh, I'll go and get a camera," and took a photo of us. And I thought, it's a lie. It's a damn lie, that photo, because we've just come round and then got the signs out in front of her. Oh, it's awful.
And so she was actually within earshot.
Sorry?
She was within earshot. You could have just spoken to her.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was just a visit in the end. There was no element of surprise or specialness. I thought it might be something we talked about for the rest of our lives.
It is a bit like if a streaker sent out a press release saying,
exactly,
"I will be performing a streak at 3:15 p.m. at Twickenham." You know?
Yeah, it's. There was in my childhood and youth, it was absolutely the norm to turn up at people's houses out of the blue, because so many people didn't have phones of any description. And so I remember walking to my brother's, which was 3 miles away, went to his flat and he wasn't in, so I just walked back again.
Wow.
And that was the norm. But I don't think people, I mean, you live up north, Al, does that still go on, the impromptu arrival? I mean, outside of the current crisis.
And people knock on a bit more in the north than they did when I lived in London. But even then, I don't think anybody would walk 3 miles and knock on and then just turn around and walk back.
I'm sorry.
Unless they're living in a Hovis advert or something.
We're just going to act like knock on is a thing. What is it?
Well, no,
knock on.
The first time he said it, I didn't get it, so I was poised to question him. And then the second time he said it, somehow repetition produced clarity. And I thought, I've got it now.
That's how I'm homeschooling. Repetition produces clarity.
I think that's, please don't mention homeschooling.
Oh, dear.
Oh, man. We had we had a row about the celebrations on VE Day.
Oh, did you?
Me and my 7-year-old. I mean, I don't remember it, but oh God, it's been absolutely nightmarish.
I did a masterstroke as the teacher the other day. I said, "Do you want to just stop this and we'll all get our books and read for 15 minutes?" And then I put a timer on. We sat and read our books for 15 minutes. They loved it, and I just put it on again. So we just sat and read. It was great. It was really good.
Yeah, I think I recommend it. Is there a legal obligation for education?
Reading's good.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
Yeah, so there we stood anyway. I was talking earlier about going to my sister-in-law's non-impromptu. And she brought out birthday cake, which was lovely, and put it on the step for us to get. And then we were all too frightened to eat it in case it had a little bit of COVID in it. So it's just left. It's just left there. This is terrible. The whole trip was a terrible thing. But, I'd love to know. What I would do if we were live is I would ask people to text in worst surprises ever. Because we must have all been involved in trying to set up a surprise, whether it's like, people do it with proposals, they do it with parties, any announcements. And I would love, we can still do this for next week. I would love to hear about ones that like this one, have ended up as desperately bleak,
you were involved
grotesque pantomimes.
Mm-hmm.
You were involved in one concerning me, which a surprise that didn't ever. Well, it all fell apart a bit. Do you remember Jonathan Ross attempted to surprise me by having posters all over Edinburgh, and then it turned out I was ill and in bed all weekend. So. I'm afraid.
Oh, that was a shame. I mean, he spent good money on those posters, and they were really funny and clever. But no, it's maybe surprises are maybe they're an error.
They're a thing of the past, maybe.
Do you think?
Maybe now that we're all locked down, they're a thing of the past. Surprises. Remember, I think customs officers used to ruin holiday proposals, didn't they, by searching people and finding engagement rings and stuff like that. That's a thing. I
would say that customs officers must have given people a few surprises over the years. They certainly made my hair stand on end. I'll tell you that. It's the big proposal thing. I mean, that is such a mighty risk. When people hide rings in trees and then go for a walk and say, "Oh, what's that glinting?" I mean that.
What about the flash mob as well? I don't like a flash mob proposal.
Does that still exist? The flash mob?
I believe
not
so.
Not now, obviously.
Oh no,
no, of course not. Speaking of, remember we used to have a thing that was Whatever Happened To, and then I would play Whatever Happened To by the Stranglers. Obviously, we don't have any jingles now in the current working on my linen basket, but I use as a generic jingle a small extract of me live singing Susan Beware of the Devil, the Dandy Livingstone hit from the 70s. Susan Beware of the Devil. Okay. And here come. Do you still get double A sides?
Ooh.
Do they still exist?
Oh.
And also, what was the point of a double A side? Was that just impatience? Surely, if you've got a double A side, the common sense is to hold back one half of this twin magical combo. And put the usual thing of a relatively pedestrian B-side, and then bring the other one.
Yeah, but we don't all have your hair shirt approach to life, which I admire, may I say.
Well, it's a bit carpe diem. We've written two great two songs. Let's put them out on the same. That's madness. I'm trying to think of an example.
Tomorrow,
Madness, they would have done it, the double A's, I'm sure,
Probably.
at some point.
They barely had enough for a double. We should. We'll when we come back, we'll have thought of some famous double A sides. Looking forward to it.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
Oh, I enjoyed that one. I don't know what that track actually was, obviously, because we're not live. But the playlist on Absolute's so good. I know I enjoyed it. Okay, yes, we were talking about double A sides. One that sprung to my mind was the Bicycle song and Fat Bottom Girls. I'm pretty sure that was a double A side. And in fact, on one of them refers to the other. I think the Bicycle song uses the phrase "fat bottom girls." So there's an intertextuality going on between the two double A sides. Very clever.
Very clever.
I'm loving your Queen knowledge these days, Frank.
Yes, the Beatles. I think "Strawberry Fields Forever" was one half of a double A side, but I can't remember what the other one.
It's not Eleanor Rigby, is it?
I don't think. Maybe.
But surely with the Beatles, retrospectively looking back, all of everything was a double A side.
Even their B-sides were good.
Yes.
That kind of
yeah. But do you think anyone has ever had the honesty and the personal integrity to having record some stuff to put out a double B-side. So, look, to be honest, we couldn't come up with a really good one. But, you're getting two average ones. Oh, man, I would... if that's ever happened, mega respect to those people. So what do you think is the logic of the double A side? Or was the logic if it no longer exists?
Isn't it a show-offy thing of our good songs are in such abundance, we're just going to give you both of these now because, that's how great we are.
It's attention-seeking, isn't it?
I think it's a bog-off, isn't it?
Maybe.
Oh, I see.
Isn't it the idea that you're buying a single, but you're actually getting two singles for your money?
Yeah.
Anyway, when this finally reaches you and you can respond, I'd love to know what our readers would call the best double A side of all time.
Also, I think streaming has definitely killed the double A side because you don't know what's A or B or...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everything seems to be like...
There's no sides?
Q
albums without sides?
Yeah.
Was that a Pink Floyd track? Without numbers. Albums without sides. Tracks
Frank,
without singles, without... Yeah, go on.
I'd like to just talk to you very briefly, and I say very briefly, advisedly, about Doctor Who.
Oh, yes.
Good luck.
I've gone back. I've gone back in, Al.
Have you?
Yeah. Which era?
I don't know things like that.
Who was the Doctor?
It's a recent one.
Okay.
Jodie Whittaker was the Doctor. Yeah. I think it must have been the most recent one on iPlayer, and I'm not going to lie, there wasn't much on, so I thought I'll give this a go.
There wasn't much on iPlayer. What a terrible...
I've seen it all.
What does that say about the BBC?
I've seen it all.
Okay.
And you know what? This is what I would say to you. Brilliant writing, fabulously directed, amazing performances, some brilliant lines, really witty scripts. I loved the writing. At one point I liked it because, one of the characters says, "Oh, you're not such a bad human. I'm from Yorkshire. That's a love letter as such."
Yes.
It's great.
I remember it well.
By our standards, this is quite a recent review, isn't it? This isn't a hashtag late review.
I could give you the numbers of at least 500 Doctor Who fans who would not give anywhere near a positive review for anything in recent times.
I get
that's
to
Doctor
that point.
Who fans for you.
And I think, I'm loving this. It's brilliant. And then I hear...
Oh, hold it there. Hold it. And then, should we make that the cliffhanger? So there we've got Emily absolutely loving the new Doctor Who. And then...
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
Now, I'm excited about this. If you were listening to the last link, you would know that Emily Dean heaped praise on Doctor Who in its current manifestation. And then there was a moment when her voice changed. Well, what is chapter 2 of this review?
Shall I tell you what chapter 2 is? It was a character in some sort of silver spray painted costume walking into the room and saying, "Leader, optimal proximity to boundary."
Oh, okay.
And I'm sorry, how can you write this brilliant script with all this wit and sort of character, and then you've got these people, heavy breathing, coming in? At one point, the character says, "You dare to question the strategy of the Siberian." Now, I'm sorry, but prior to that, you've got people speaking normally. Why do they speak like that? They just need to get rid of the monsters, Frank. That's all I'm saying.
They've had some robotic implants.
Oh, have they?
Which, that affects their voices quite a lot. If you can imagine. If you can imagine to be built so you were sort of built into a robot. So you were sort of there was some flesh in there and some WD-40 living side by side. Yes.
Well, I was watching it with subtitles on because I couldn't understand what they were saying, the Cybermen. And at one point, all it said was muffled breathing.
Oh.
He sniffs, exhales loudly.
When you first described someone coming in all in silver, I pictured those street performers that you used to see that don't move unless a kid puts 10 pence in a hat.
It's not worlds away.
They must be having a hard time now.
Oh, I should think so.
Mm. So what I'm saying is...
About time too.
My review of Doctor Who is... It's fabulous, and I really would love it if they just get rid of the monster thing.
Well, I can't agree with you on this.
Well,
I mean, that is like when they did a remake of Fawlty Towers in the United States of America and decided to drop the Basil character because he was too aggressive. I think it ran for 3 episodes. They made the Prunella Scales figure the owner, and the person who came up with the brainy scheme that saved the day every week was Manuel.
Wow.
Oh.
So they tampered, is what they did. They tampered, they eroded.
Do you mind the monsters, Al?
No, I haven't seen it, but I was going to say I've seen some Frank Skinner approved television this week. Do you remember last week you were talking about an art programme? What's it called? Is it called The Joy of Art?
The Joy of Painting.
Oh, The Joy of Painting.
Yes.
I talked about it to you.
The same a landscape painting every week.
I thought it was one of your eccentric stories, and that night I went upstairs and my wife and children were watching it. It's very watchable, although I completely agree. It's exactly the same show every night.
It's unbelievable.
He's an interesting character.
I've watched it too on the recommendation of Frank Skinner, and I absolutely loved it.
There's one bit on it where it's almost like his cheery mask slips. As he's painting, he just stops and he goes, "I'm okay." And then he carries on.
Oh, well, he's an ex-military man.
It's really odd. It's like he's had a flashback of some kind.
No, I think he was in Korea and stuff. I think he's a bloke who could. I mean, it seems odd, but mid relaxing landscape, he could go. He could suddenly add napalm to the mountain scene, if not allowed. Yeah, he's no longer with us, Bob, but. I think he took out about 18 people in a McDonald's. No, he didn't. He didn't. He didn't. He was
End the link now.
Oh, do you think I should? What, just for safety? Yeah, you're probably right. Thank you. It's good to have a legal representative with us at all time.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
Hello, this is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio with Emily Dean and Alan Cochrane. We're not live, I'll be honest with you, so do not text the show, but you can follow us at Frank on the Radio on Twitter and Instagram. Or, of course, you can email us via the Absolute Radio website, for goodness sake.
Okay.
So.
We've heard from our readers, Frank.
Tremendous.
Do you remember last week you were discussing the lyrics? Was it Live and Let Die? Or Live and Let Live, as I think you called it?
Yeah, live and Let Die. Yes, I'm not totally across the lyrics, as I called it, Live and Let Live. But yes, there was I had a grammatical query about about that. But yeah, then we got on to the great lyrics of all time, and I think I offered up as a par example the Mountain Greenery song, which rhymes Mountain Greenery with the line, beans could get no keenery ception in a beanery. That was where we went there. Hard to top. What we got? What they got?
Well, Paul Hughes from Gateshead says, "Hi, Frank, Emily and Alan. The discussion about poor song lyrics this morning, it wasn't really poor. I mean, I think we mentioned a few.
No, it was remarkable. Then you must make your own judgments.
Well, no, because I did cite She's Broke, but it's okay, it's California from Lady as a Tramp.
I don't think he says the K part. I think he just says she's broke, it's okay.
Well, that's why I hate
California. Yeah.
He says she's broke, but it's okay. I hate it. It's reminded me of a favourite example of mine. It's the bit of the Bros song, I Owe You Nothing. Are you familiar with I Owe You Nothing, Frank?
Very familiar.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Al. You'll know this then. He says, I'll watch you crumble like a very old wall. A simile for Frank to cast his poetry analysing eye over there.
I quite like it. I tell you what I like about it. Our garden wall on both sides of my garden is very crumbly and decrepit, and it's got that fabulous that sort of decaying grandeur that you get in Venice. And I really like that. So I could imagine saying, let's not name names, but I can imagine saying to someone, that you look like a... What's the line again? You look all crumbly like a wall.
He says, I'll watch you crumble like a very old wall.
Yeah, I can see that being... I can see me having said it, then justifying it as meaning that they look like they've got a distinctive, glorious aging about them.
And I grew up in Yorkshire, and I think dry stone walling is quite prevalent in that county, and it's massively overrated. It's always falling apart every time you just.
Well, they should moisturise. It'd be much better.
I don't think Bros were thinking of the dry stone walling, but can I just point out it's reminded me of another great Bros lyric in When Will I Be Famous?
See, that's the only, I'll go on, be honest, I thought they were one-hit wonders, and now you've opened my eyes.
I had all the albums, all too.
And of course, I'm no longer, legitimately, can I sing When Will I Be Famous? It's one of the great losses of doing well.
God. Do you want to hear this lyric?
Yeah.
They say in When Will I Be Famous, you've read Karl Marx and you've taught yourself to dance.
I
mean, come on, Karl Marx in a pop song? Fabulous.
Interesting. I think that's the formula.
Doesn't... Exactly. Doesn't Karl Marx get a mention in Panic in Detroit on Aladdin's Sane? No,
really?
It's isn't it in Driving Saturday? Lennon read a book of Marx or something like that, or is it American Pie? This is good, isn't it? This is good.
Great.
Multiple choice radio here on Absolute Radio. That's a good one, I must say. So I must look into Bros. Then I thought they were in and out. Did Aha have more than one hit?
Yes.
Did they? Okay.
Yes.
Not many.
No. And as you know, I often get them confused with Elbow. Because I don't know my Aha. Anyway, I think that might be a good time to go to a link as well. No, not into a link, out of a link. I thought you said into it. No, I did say into it. It was a mistake. We can change it in the edit. We won't. We're leaving it in, so get over it.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
So I was talking about my strange semi-lockdown life. How's it with... what about you, Al? How's life up north?
Life up north is good. I haven't launched a poetry podcast in lockdown, and I haven't got a writing career. So lockdown has changed things quite dramatically for somebody that predominantly was a live comedian, in that it's all gone. But
well, I'm guessing you've written 3 or 4 hours of top-end stand-up.
At the very least, I think, as a conservative estimate, I would say that, yeah. But it's just finding a place to perform it, isn't it, in a safe and convenient and hopefully lucrative way. I was hoping to get some job offers, maybe like some voiceover or something like that, but not much has come in, I'm not going to lie. But then the other day, I received an email that really made me realise how few work offers I've had recently. I'll read it to you.
Good.
It's entitled Comedian, and it says, "Good evening, Alan."
Far, so
Comedian.
good.
Comedian. "Good evening, Alan. I saw you online. I'm looking for a comedian who would be willing to do some naked stand-up over Skype/Zoom/etc. for a nudist get-together we're having. Might you be interested? RL." And it's sent from a perhaps unsurprisingly secure and private email.
RL, Frank.
Who
I
do
mean,
you think?
Robert Louis Stevenson.
No, he can't be.
He's not with us anymore.
He wouldn't be party to it either, in my opinion.
But he had a character called Alun, didn't he?
What about Richard Lester, who
Maybe
directed the Beatles movies?
Well, I just assumed that it was another comic, perhaps pranking me.
Oh yes, surely it's another comic.
Or maybe, a fan of the radio show thinking, I wonder, just how low the cockerel will stoop
Naked
for a few
comedy.
quid.
Well, not
What
too
about
low
Ray
in that
Liotta?
context.
Might be Ray Liotta.
And I'm not
Ray the
mocking
Otter?
nudists. I don't want people to think I'm mocking nudists. I'm laughing. I'm somewhat amused at the work offers that I'm currently receiving.
I'd love to know whether that was it can't be a real thing, can it?
Here's my question to you. Can you guess what I replied to this email?
I'm guessing you refused the job.
Well...
Oh, did I get that wrong?
Let's just say...
Oh, my God.
Times are a bit lean, Frank.
Yeah, they are. And,
Oh, my God,
so are
Frank is
you,
doing it.
happily.
Well, I'm not that lean. I've been really piling it in during lockdown. My reply, how much? That's all I put.
You didn't.
I didn't put my name, I didn't put their name, I just put how much, ?
You didn't.
And then I got a reply saying, I don't even know what to suggest. I've had a wide range of quotations. What's your usual rate? Now, I love the idea that this person thinks that I have a usual rate for a naked Zoom gig.
Yeah, I presume you take your normal rate and double it at least.
Also, I've got to say, Alan, I hope this person was male. You've got to be very careful about sending emails with how much to ladies.
They started it.
It's, at least he didn't ask that. Well, I don't know. I used to go out with a naturist, and she was very championing of it as a lifestyle, and said she met a lot of interesting people.
Oh, I'm sure they're lovely. I just don't know if it would help
I didn't believe her for a second.
I just don't know if it'd help my jokes if I had nothing on.
I was guessing it was all weirdos, but I mean, I've been wrong before.
Frank Skinner on
Absolute Radio.
What about you, Emily? You must. I'm guessing you still lead an interesting and varied life.
Genuinely thought for a second you were asking if Emily would do the nudist gig that I'm not.
God. No.
How
Also,
much?
Zoom. Could you do one? It was just bare
Disgusting.
shoulders, and you just said, "No, I am naked."
I did
No,
wonder
they
if
need
I could hide
evidence.
myself a bit.
Because the thing is about nudists, I wouldn't have thought they'd have asked for, like, dare I say, hard and fast evidence. I think if you said, "No, I am naked," I think they are the sort of... I imagine they're quite,
think so?
you know... Yeah, I
They're
think they're the
trusting
sort
people.
of people who... Yeah, they must be trusting, haven't they, nudists?
I mean, to be honest, it's like a triple threat. I'd be nervous about the technology. I'd be nervous about my comedy because I'm rusty, and I'd be nervous about the nudity. It's actually more like an anxiety dream than a work offer when I think about it.
It's. But I mean, you know, when you have to use the stuff around you at the beginning of an act. to refer to. It's one way of being a prop comic. So what about you, Em? I'm guessing you haven't had any offers of a similar nature.
Oh, presume away. But it's interesting that you say, "Oh, you lead a fascinating life," because I did just tell you I devoted an hour of my life to watching Doctor Who. But anyway,
Yeah, that's what made me think of it.
Yeah, you've gone up in his estimation.
Indeed.
I know, I
as if
thought
that,
it's
as if
growing
that
on
could
me.
happen.
It's partly Moffat. Moffat has drawn me to Who.
Yeah,
But-
you know he doesn't write the current.
No, I know,
Okay.
but I know that.
Okay.
Everyone calm down. We've all had a drink. I wanted to ask you boys about the clothing situation. We're talking about Alan and his no clothes policy, depending on the price. And I've noticed, I've definitely my style has changed in lockdown. I say changed, it's kind of disappeared. So I've never been a fan. You know, I've always hated that concept of save it for best. You know, that idea of, I'm not wearing those shoes, I'm saving it for best. Or I hate that. I think it's like that 1950s notion of a front room that you keep for best. I just think there's something a bit mean-spirited about it.
I also think in the midst of a global pandemic, it's probably optimistic, isn't it? I think wear it while you can is probably the
I think you're right.
motto.
And do you know, I think it's partly because I remember years ago, an ex-boyfriend, I always remember the posh dad when my boyfriend at the time offered me a gin and tonic, and I never forgot the father whispering, "Leave the Gordons, get the Sainsbury's gin out of the cellar." And I know. I know. It was a low point.
Well, where I always think of is when I used to be an enormous fan of lime barrels in, I think it was Dairy Box of chocolates. And they were like a chocolate half barrel.
Yes, I remember them.
With lime juice, and I loved them. And I was bought a small box of chocolates, and I thought, oh man, there's 2 lime barrels in this. I couldn't believe my luck. So I ate all the other chocolates that I quite like, saving myself for the 2 lime barrels. And I was just finishing off a coffee cream, and my brother Keith burst in and went, wow, chocolates, and just ate the lime barrels.
Oh.
And ever since then, I think I think that you do what they do on American chat shows, top weighting. You put the good stuff on first.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, now I always eat the best chocks first. And as you say, holding back outfits and stuff it's an error.
Frank Skinner. Absolute Radio.
So sorry, I interrupted Emily with talk of lime barrel chocolates. You were saying about keeping things for best.
Yes, and it turns out I've never done that, but this lockdown has changed my whole attitude to that, because really it's a bit, it's a bit tree falling in the forest, isn't it? In the sense of, if I wear the holy bobbly jumper and no one's around to see it, did I ever wear it?
Great.
But is there an argument that if you wear just sort of sloppy, you see those people who just wear sportswear. This is no disrespect to you, Al. I'm on about
I am one of those people now.
Not in semi-lockdown. I always think that because they're sort of fleecy and elasticated, that it leads to sort of fleecy and elasticated thinking,
Yes.
rather than buckled and finely stitched thinking. So even if you're in on your own, do you think it can drag you down a bit if you think, I'm just going to wear that jumper I've never really liked for 6
Do you know,
weeks?
I didn't until just about a second ago. But I think you could have a point. It's the sort of slightly more sloppy, less disciplined approach to life, isn't it, in a sense?
There was a man I read about who, he was a scientist, and whenever he worked, and he was mainly not so much in the lab in a lab coat as a bloke who wrote
he wasn't
about
working
science.
in the lab late one night.
No, he wasn't. And he would put on a suit and tie to work because he held science in such high respect.
Excellent.
And that was just when he was in the house, So I just wonder if there is an argument.
It's interesting you should say that, because I've noticed for this period, I have been wearing a lot of holy jeans. I went out for a walk with Ray the other day and it felt very drafty. And I got back and I sat on my kitchen bench and I got a shock. I didn't realise how big the hole was under my bottom.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's little things like that. It's like you said, it's just, I noticed I put a dressing gown on the other day. It was a white sort of toweling robe, but I had the belt was from a grey robe, and that is upsetting.
I'm not a big fashion man, but I draw the line at that. Kath does that. Kath will wear a dressing gown with a different belt, and I find that inexcusable.
As a martial artist, I just assume that you've been promoted to grey belt.
Grey belt is for the seniors who do martial arts.
This is what I've decided.
She wears a lot of odd socks as well, Kat. She doesn't.
Does she?
She sees. So
you think Kat's always dressed like lockdown wear?
Yeah, I think she has. But she feels that it's an affectation to take the time to find the matching socks.
Yeah.
So I think it's an affectation to wear odd socks, personally, but we're all different.
Well, do you know what I would say during this period? What I've decided is that I'm bringing the subs out, garment-wise, for a few games, and then getting the best I can out of them. And then I'm going to start afresh when we're all allowed out again with box fresh. So I'm just wearing them into the ground. It's like just taking a relationship to the absolute final sort of end, the worst row you can have.
Yes.
Before leaving.
Yes,
Do you approve?
we've all. I can think of a relationship that I was in for, I would say, 3 years. I mean, an extra 3 years that where I knew it was never going to work, but I just hung around. I wouldn't
Absolute
recommend
Radio.
that. I think Absolute Radio does not recommend that, if I remember rightly, to any of our listeners, or indeed our presenters.
Frank Skinner. Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
Absolute Radio.
I'll tell you, I was, Emily was talking about how her garb has changed. I'm calling it semi-lockdown now, the current period. I've noticed that as I've got older, I've become a bit warier about T-shirts with things on them, slogans
Yes.
or, Doctor Who. Doctor Who T-shirts is what I'm talking about. But I've been wearing a lot of those now, and I've found it very liberating. I've been wearing my Bizarro Superman T-shirt, and I remember I was looking in the mirror because I'm cutting my own hair, and I had the Bizarro suit, and I thought, God, I always assumed that the S was the wrong way round on this, because the S on Bizarro Superman is a sort of a messed up Superman from a parallel universe, lives on a square globe.
We all knew that.
And I always thought that the S was the wrong way around on the Bizarro. It isn't. So that was a revelation. And then, of course, it occurred to me I was looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what else?
Well, I did. I mean, this is continuing the clothes theme. I ended up, as a result of, there was one morning, hasn't happened most mornings. I do try and ensure that I'm dressed at least. There was one morning when I'm afraid I had an epic fail.
Can I withdraw that? Actually, it sounded a bit too. It sounded like someone at the end of a food show going,
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, no, I withdraw that.
And I was wearing, one of those things. I was writing, and I'd gone. Sometimes when I'm writing, I go a bit Gollum, and I just go into my hole. And I was in my Gollum hole, and the doorbell rang.
Gollum doesn't wear a lot, does he?
No.
He'd do
Gollum.
well at the nudist gig.
He must feel the burn as well in the thighs. Gollum. He's in a constant squat, more or less.
Yes.
It was Gollum in a fleece bathrobe, is what I was.
Okay.
So the doorbell rang, and it was the postman. And I know my postman. I love my postman. He listens to the show. So this is going to be embarrassing because I'm afraid I told him a lie out of shame. And I did that thing that women often do when there's a knock at the door and they're wearing not much, which is they clutch the lapels of their bathrobe together. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
I'm picturing Youtha Joyce going to the door in Man About the House.
Exactly. And do you know what I did? He said, oh, hello. And he looked surprised. He's been up since 6 or whatever. It's 11:30. I'm there in a bathrobe. He said, hello. And do you know what I did? I said, oh, hello.
Oh, what?
I did. I feel sick. I'm so ashamed of this. He said,
COVID camouflage.
He said, are you okay? I said, no, I don't know what's happened. I've come down with something.
Oh.
I feel so embarrassed. This is my way of confessing to him because I know he'll hear this. He said, oh, you poor thing. What do you think it is? And then he panicked, backed off.
Yeah, of course.
And I thought, now he thinks I'm a vector. I said, oh, it's not the virus, definitely. It's like and I didn't know what to say. And I used a word.
Go on.
I used a word I haven't used, I don't think, in my entire life. I said, it's like a general malaise. Malaise!
That is very, very fine.
That is
it's
really
a
good.
word we all know, but for some reason we never go there.
I honestly thought you were going to pick hangover, but malaise is
I said
so
malaise.
elegant.
I said malaise.
Interestingly as well. Oh, sorry. No.
No, that was, and then it was awful, Frank. I said, I hope you get better. I said, I'll be okay. I'll just rest up.
Lying for no reason. at all. The interesting thing was you were talking about how you've become very Gollum-like, but your voice was very. I think it's Alan Howard in the film of the whatever that Tolkien book's called, Lord of the Rings. Yes. The voice of the ring is. And it sounded a bit like you actually did voice of the ring in your most Gollum mood. Oh, it's a funny old world.
Frank Skinner on
Absolute Radio.
This is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio with Emily Dean and Alan Cochrane. We're not live, so please do not text the show, but you can follow us at Frank on the Radio on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us via the Absolute Radio website. Okay, we haven't really talked about the news, have we? What's in it?
Well, the Sunday Times Rich List is in the news.
Oh, of course.
As indeed, it seems like a hardy perennial, isn't it? And ironically, it's always talked about in the run-up to it for some reason, rather than on the actual Sunday.
I think it's because probably the Sunday Times want people to know about it before it goes on sale, rather than after. So they can,
well, also, Frank, it is essentially, I call it the Rich List / burglars cut out and keep guidebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
Burglars to-do list.
Although there wasn't many shocks. I'm surprised how many people. I think there were 3 Beatles in the including George Harrison, via his wife and son. Here comes the sun. It was. There's a lot of people who linger. McCartney's up there, Elton John.
Yeah.
What about Michael Flatley? Come on.
Now, Flatley's he's the 10th richest musician in Britain and Ireland, I suppose. Mm. No wonder he dances with his hands right next to his pockets. Not taking it. Is he actually a musician? Michael Flatley?
He's a dancer, isn't he?
Excuse me, he's the Lord of the Dance.
Oh, okay? He's a lord.
But,
he's not just a dancer, he's the Lord of the Dance.
Oh, so it might be inherited wealth if he's a lord.
I think if you had to sum up his profession, Michael Flatley, you'd say he raises his legs for money. Surely.
How much? Quite a lot, it turns out.
Yeah. But he's still up there. I didn't know he was still active. Is he still doing? Is he doing a lot of live stuff?
Well,
not at the moment, obviously.
I do remember he had a film out. Do you remember hearing about this a couple of years ago called Blackbird?
I remember the very, very early years of internet. He supposedly had a film out, but people thought it could have been a lookalike. But anyway.
God.
Flexible. He's flexible, Flatley. Flexible Flatley, I call it.
This was a sort of thriller that he'd written,
Did he?
directed and financed. Now, when you financed it yourself, I worry.
Yes.
It was. I just remember it was called Blackbird. I'm sure our readers will know more about it. And I don't believe it got a release. But, yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened on that front. But
well, I'm desperate to see it, though, having found out that it exists.
I remember the tagline, it said something like, Michael Flatley as you've never seen him before. And I remember thinking, what, with a top on? Essentially.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Likeable.
And it turned
Likeable.
Wow.
Zing.
Frankie's richer than the actual Bond. Daniel Craig, it turns out.
Is that right? But he wasn't in the musician. I find it hard to cross-pollinate across the various rich lists. There is a general rich list, isn't there, which covers all the bases.
I think that's the week after, isn't it? I think.
Oh, okay.
No, Alan, the general rich list is all steel and sort of milk cartons. It's not the fun ones.
Yeah.
I wish something like the Morning Star would have a poor list of the 500 poorest people in Britain and put it all in perspective. It was. God. I mean, I know it might be well, I don't know. Would it be a more tragic read? I don't know. It depends on your definition of tragedy, I would say. But
me.
That's coming up next.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
We were discussing the rich list and indeed the poor list of the poorest people. I think that you could justify, if the Sunday Times said we're doing a poor list as well, the justification would be, okay, people, are excited about like last season in the Premier League, Liverpool and Man City battling it out, but also the relegation battle is interesting. So you could justify it. And I think there's something. I thought they might not have the rich list. I didn't think that because I don't think about the rich list much. But if once I was aware of it, I thought they might have given it a miss this year.
Right, because it's in poor
context.
Taste.
Well, I don't know if it's in poor taste. The whole thing is
I've got a theory though for you, Frank.
Go on.
That reminds me of, I told you that story once, didn't I? That posh man, I think he was a Duke that my dad was filming, and one of the crew just literally made a comment about something, I don't know, the grandfather clock or something, and his brilliant response was, "Get out, fellow noticed me things." And there is something very fellow noticed me things about all of this, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. I bet Elton John says that every time he reads the rich list. Fellow noticed me things. Can you imagine the varying contexts he's used that quote in?
Oh, come on, that's disgusting.
I'd say one thing about it is that there are some people where you think, well, you can see that their financial success is related to their talent, hard work, whatever.
Yeah. Not always.
And some less so. I mean, most of the musicians I've truly loved have died, I think as the French put it, sans pot pour urination. Whereas the summit...
I don't remember that bit of the Michel Thomas bit.
Okay. Oh, Michel Thomas. Michel Thomas, which I recommend as a language learning, lots of shortcuts, but loose dentures. So we'd say, je vais, I'm on my way. And I found that very difficult to live with. Great, though. Michel Thomas.
I think
language
there should
courses.
be,
Try it.
Frank, for this rich list, I do think there should be a line in the sand between self-made and inherited, frankly, because it's the equivalent of the drugs cheats in the sporting. It's an analogy that you came up with, actually. And in terms of writers, I remember you coming up with that. It was brilliant. And comedians that use writers. And it's the same thing for me. You've got people that race clean, that start with zero. If you start with several million, I'm sorry, different race. Discuss.
Well, there's a lot of... who would that apply? I mean, presumably the musicians and sports people are usually the only ones I ever look at in this. They're all self-made, aren't they, more or less?
Yeah, I don't think Ed Sheeran inherited his wealth, did he?
Well, he is the richest musician under 30 in Britain, and that shows an effects pedal is much cheaper than a band. I think we can all learn from that. He's a bit like me getting hair clippers and a thing for getting the hard skin off the bottom of your feet. I mean, just get a gadget. Don't get people, get a gadget.
And no matter how much you earn,
yes, madam, John, you heard me right. Sorry.
No matter how much you earn, Elton John will still mispronounce your surname.
Yeah.
She ran.
I'm
Elton
John.
John. Number 5, Till Tandon.
Yeah, he's still tanding. Fair play to him. And I'll tell you another one I noted is Lewis Hamilton is the richest sportsman, I think, in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
Well, he's the richest in Britain, according to this. But he is the best in the world, isn't he, at what he does? So I sort of think that's okay. David Beckham was richest sportsman for quite a while. I don't think anyone at any point in his career for 1 second thought David Beckham was the best footballer in the world. I would say that he mingled a reasonable amount of talent with what I would call...
That?
I would say he took the Anna Kournikova route to the rich list a bit. So he was a good footballer, but he was good looking and all that.
Okay.
And I think that is that's the difference in it. It's you've got to ask how they got there rather than how much they got. What about that for a nice little aphorism? We can
self-praise.
If I was on Twitter, I'd have that out like a shot. But obviously, I'm not.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
Emma, I hate to get you to repeat yourself, but that fellow noticed me things quote,
Yes.
which is such a very fine thing. Where did it come from again?
So my dad, who, as you know, was sort of a documentary maker, and he was making a documentary. I cannot remember who it was. I'll find out, but it was a duke of some sort. So it was a member of the aristocracy, and they were in his stately home. And a member of the crew had commented, being very polite and pleasant, saying, "Oh, that's a nice grandfather clock." And the Duke's response was, "Get out. Fellow noticed me things," he said to my father after he'd asked the man to leave. So I think it
so
just...
the idea is there's something a bit crass about mentioning people's things that material...
Yes, you're not allowed to comment on material possessions because it's vulgar.
I'm going to write it down as a potential heckle put down for my nudist gig.
Fantastic. Oh, it makes me happy. Did you see top of young rich sportsman Gareth Bale?
I was surprised by that.
Can't get a game. Can't get a game, Bale.
And also a bit of footage of him recreating that overhead kick in his home with like a sponge ball on his couch.
I like that.
He's got a huge couch, and I'm sure it's just so that he can do that.
I'll tell you what, he has got a lot of cushions.
Yes.
Gareth Bale's
he likes a
cushion collection. Honestly, there was like 3 or 4. I mean, he was turning a lovely big sofa.
Yeah.
I think he's probably had that experience when you sit on a sofa, and most sofas are not. It looks like no one has ever run a tape measure along the thigh of the average human being, because you sit on a lot of sofas and you can't sit right back and get the front, that sort of fold of your knee into the front of the cushion. Do you know what I mean? They're too long. Right. They're longer than the average thigh. So I think he's thought, well, this is too long for my thighs. I'll just get more cushions.
Yeah.
That's
I like
Gareth
that
Bale
you instinctively adopted the footballer's tense whilst talking about Gareth Bale. What his thought is,
I've looked up. I've seen. But so it's not the best list. It's the best agent list.
Yeah.
Do you think so? Well, Anthony Joshua's on there, which doesn't surprise me because he's had a good few years.
If you've been at the absolute top end of your career like that, I think that's reasonable. But I was reassured to see some rubbish people in there. It's made me feel better about everything.
Yeah, I was surprised that there's one of those street performers painted silver managed to get on there. That's shocking. When that was compiled, but now they could be heading for the relegation battle. Probably took a dip, yeah.
No, I was thinking the other day. I think I sat back and thought about my career in retrospective, and I think things I've done, like creatively, I think they've been often not good enough to be popular, but too good to be very popular.
Oh,
okay.
And that's, I'm thinking that might, I don't know any stonemasons, but I'm thinking that could be a nice inscription at the end.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
So we're talking about the rich list, Frank, or as we've now rechristened it, the fellow noticed me things list.
Yes.
And I was interested, obviously, the sports section I like the sports area in that list because, they earn the big bucks, don't they? But I wanted to, while we're on the subject of sporting news, I saw something I loved this week, which was a picture from the Bundesliga club Borussia, is it Mönchengladbach?
Oh, yes, Borussia Mönchengladbach. In München steht ein Hofbrauhaus, 1, 2, Zucker. Sorry, I
Lovely.
ordered an umpire band. It didn't work as well without them.
I like it. But have you seen this brilliant way they've come up with to deal with essentially the social distancing affecting fixtures? They've got this initiative called, is it called something like Stay at Home in the Stands or something?
Yeah.
So essentially you pay £17 for a
I'd
cutout.
say the pilot scheme for this was the
Yes.
Arsenal mural.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's thousands, in fact,
Yeah.
I think, of cardboard cutouts of real fans in their actual seats.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of head and shoulders. So if anyone's familiar with the game Guess Who,
Yes.
it's
it
essentially
does.
you're a Guess Who figure, aren't you?
Very clever.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it is a really nice idea. I just wondered, I presume it rains as much as at Bundesliga games as it does at in English and British games. So are they going to get a bit swollen and blistery
Soggy.
and start to... When we think of when we were due to play Everton, we being West Bromwich Albion, and I looked up on the website what the Everton fans were saying about us, and they said a lot of the Albion fans won't wear collars, but you'll be able to spot them because they all look about 52, even the kids. So I think it's a great idea, and it goes to charity, the money, not to the club, because obviously they've already
that's
paid.
good.
They've already paid
Yeah.
for these seats.
I'd like to ask you both something as, you're both comics, you do your little gigs. Would you, at your little gigs, would you consider that? Let's say they said to you, you can go back on tour or you can do some shows, but you can't have an audience, but you can do this cardboard cutout scheme.
I think,
First question.
to quote Alan Cochrane, go on, together, 1, 2, 3. How much? I think, looking back, I may have unknowingly done some gigs to a room full of cardboard cutouts.
I've definitely
love
done
a
gigs to an
cardboard
audience that looked bored. I don't know if it's the same thing.
Very good.
Very good, Al.
I am a big
Thank
fan
you.
of a cardboard cutout. I don't know why they aren't more popular. In fact, I'm sitting now, I'd say 5 feet away. I'm not properly socially distancing.
rather rude. Kath's,
from a
very
from a cardboard
animated.
Cutout Dalek.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah, and I used to
course you are.
have John Wayne cardboard cutout from, I think it was Chisholm, from the film Chisholm. I recognise the outfit. Have you ever had any life-size cardboard cutouts?
Can I tell you, I associate them very much with the video stores of the sort of 80s and
yeah.
90s.
Good
And there'd be a
times.
sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. And then I associated it quite a lot with students, if I'm honest, in the room,
Yes.
having a sort of die-hard Bruce
Well, I'm
Willis
going
or
to
something.
make this. I'm going to make this another one of our long-term texting for next week.
Yeah.
Who have you had as a life-size cardboard cutout? Let us know, because I'm very interested to find it. I think that if you want, never mind the rich list, let's find who qualifies for a cardboard cutout.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
We were talking about the German club Borussia Mönchengladbach of the Bundesliga having cardboard cutouts of all their fans in the stands. Because one of the problems in doing this in Germany is it's quite hard to represent a mullet in 2D. I think they'll have to imagine some of that.
Yeah, have
bit.
to imagine party at the back.
I will be
suppose
watching
that's what 3D printers are for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just for that. I wonder if they can I wonder if you can pay a bit extra and get 3D printed for the game.
Do you
I'll
not
tell you
find
what, it'll
cardboard
make it-
cutouts a bit depressing?
Well, it'd be much easier to walk down the line that you're sitting in, wouldn't it? Because
Yes.
most people at West Brom, I would say, were the upper end of sturdiness rather than the skinny end. And
The
it's
BMI
quite
scale.
getting down the row is quite difficult. Yeah.
Well, it will be next time you go after this
It will.
broadcast.
Yeah.
Legs
But when
all
will that-
thrust out to trip you over.
When will that be? I wonder. I'll tell you something though. I think there's been the Premier League. They think is going to restart playing behind closed doors, as they always sort it, which I love. I love that.
Always has been in my history, but there you go.
But I see have you ever considered having a cardboard cutout nowadays, just for old time's sake? Just on the pillow. Anyway, I think that I know footballers would own up to this, but I think once they've played a couple of games, they're all saying, "Oh, it'll be terrible, there'll be no atmosphere." I think once they've played a couple of games, they'll be saying, "Oh God," to each other, "Do we have to have fans?"
Yeah.
I mean, no, there's no abuse. No one's giving up when we 1-0 down, giving us a lot of negative vibes. Nobody's throwing anything.
No smell of pies.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a risk. I think they might never come back again. Once they, how are you going to keep them down on the farm now that they've seen Paris? That's the question I'd like to have.
Make a very good texting under normal circumstances.
I just think maybe the standard of the football will get better when we watch it behind closed doors. And I think players who we thought were very average will suddenly look brilliant because they haven't got people on their back. They haven't got that nerve.
People booing them, telling them that they're rubbish and sending back, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it'll be a revelation.
It'll be quite zen. The game will be more zen, obviously, which I quite like. You'll just hear these sort of ghostly voices. I quite like that.
I used to go to reserve games when I was a kid, and there would be like 100 people in the stadium, and that was a bit like that. You could hear them shouting at each other and and all that. Yeah.
And please, no one text in and say, "Isn't it essentially like being Arsenal?" Because come on.
No, well, that is yes, exactly.
Well, you know.
The Arsenal mural, of course, which was, I think they had to have one, and there was building at one end of the ground, and so they put up a mural. But that didn't feature actual individuals like this.
No.
I think this is a splendid idea. I'm very keen. Now I've become a Bundesliga enthusiast from now on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really keen to watch a game on the telly with the cardboard cutouts.
Yes.
You're Roy Keane, you are.
I am slightly Roy Keane.
Or Diane.
But I don't really drink now, so not completely. Anyway, so we come to the end of another lockdown, remotely done show, and we've got through it. And thank you guys for listening. Mucho appreciatum. Do keep, as they used to say in ancient Rome, do keep sending in stuff, because I miss you guys. I miss your input enormously. So please stay in contact. And if the good Lord spares us and the creeks don't rise, we'll be back again this time next week. Now, stay alert.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.